Good afternoon, all. In my ongoing reviews of 1960s science fiction television shows that I enjoyed, we're going back to 1963 to Gerry and Sylvia Anderson's last black and white Supermarionation show, and that was Fireball XL5. One of my favorites as a kid because it was one of the few shows of theirs that was shown in America because NBC purchased it and they showed it on their Saturday morning kids show. So I got to see it, which I really enjoyed because I always liked science fiction shows. Um, ran for 39 episodes. It was created by Gerry and Sylvia Anderson. Was written by some terrific writers, both Gerry and Sylvia Anderson and Anthony Marriott and Dennis Spooner and Anthony Marriott, Dennis Spooner, and Alan Patillo. And Dennis Spooner, for those of you who don't know, created the meddling monk on Doctor Who and a couple of other characters for early Doctor Who episodes. Some really terrific episodes. It's about the adventures of our heroic main character, Colonel Steve Zodiac, played by Paul Maxwell, and his friends, Dr. Venus, who was played by Sylvia Anderson, Professor Matthew Maddock, played by David Graham, and his commander was Commander Zero, played by John Bluthal, an Australian actor, and his assistant was Lieutenant 90. I believe he was also played by David Graham. And uncredited, Gerry Anderson played Robbie the Robot, who was the ship's navigator. Robot who was built by Professor Maddock and is supposed to be the most sophisticated artificial intelligence on Earth. They worked for an organization called the World Space Patrol. They patrolled a sector of space called Sector 25. There were other Fireball spaceships that patrolled other sectors. There were allegedly 30 of them. Again, the music was done by Barry Gray, and the special effects were done by the great Derek Meddings, including the main spaceship, which I loved, Fireball XL5, which would launch down a long curved ramp and use a rocket trolley. And at the end of the ramp, the rocket trolley would detach and it would turn on its main motor and go up into the atmosphere. That was based on something Gerry Anderson read about a Russian program that was allegedly going to use a ramp like that. It was not, as some people thought, borrowed from When Worlds Collide, because that movie actually came later than this series. Or no, actually it didn't, but he didn't. He claims he did not borrow it from them. But they would go on these terrific adventures, usually trying to defend the Earth from various nefarious aliens. There was one episode called The Triads where the aliens were actually friendly and they helped them. But mostly, and there was another one, I think, where the aliens weren't necessarily hostile, but they were at war with each other, and they kind of manipulated them into coming. One side manipulated them into coming out to allegedly have a peace conference, but they were actually planning to attack the other side and blame it on the crew of the Fireball XL5. So they had nefarious intentions as well. So they always had to guard against these things. The show had a lot of humor. There was another character who was the voice is uncredited, but was very funny. I suspect it was Gerry Anderson too. Was a character called Zuni, who is Venus's pet, and he's not a space monkey as some people thought. He was an alien called the Lazoon that came from a foreign planet called Calavio, where they were populous, and he would repeat things in a kind of a funny, goofy voice. He'd say, "Welcome home," and "Howdy, folks," and he would wave his arms around like a monkey, sort of. He wasn't very intelligent. He had about the intelligence of like a 2 to 3 year old child, but he could learn things if you repeated them to him often enough. And he would like to drive Robert the Robot crazy by repeating things like given the order, set course for home. And so he would say, "Set course for home," like 500 times until Robert literally blew his stack and smoke would come out of his head. I thought that was great. They went on, like I said, these great various space adventures. One of the best things about the series was the closing theme, which was sung by Fireball, sung by Don Gordon. Somewhere on the internet, there is a rather embarrassing video of me singing that song karaoke. I do not have a great voice, and I cannot, in good conscience, recommend that you search for it, but I wanted to sing it because I always enjoyed the song. Really one of the best things about it. A couple of episodes that I really liked were one called The Granitoid Tanks, about these really evil, like alien robots that just wanted to kill people on this planet called Planet 73, where there's a scientific station, and they're going to attack it. And they have to go, Steve Zodiac and Venus and Colonel Maddox have to go and figure out a way to stop them. Um, what they don't know is that a lady from a music store where they bought this like one-piece orchestra kind of machine to give for Venus as a birthday present, stowed away because she'd always wanted to go. Her dad was an astronaut, and she always wanted to go on a space adventure. And they're very Steve is very upset that she stowed away. It turns out it's a good thing they did, because when they try to stop the granitoids, nothing they have works. Even this special machine that Professor Maddox created, it doesn't work on them. But all of a sudden, they just stop attacking. They can't figure out why. Well, they're allergic to a mineral called Plyton, and the woman who stowed aboard has this unusual necklace made of some kind of strange mineral. It turns out the necklace is made out of Plyton, and it gives off a radiation that harms the granitoids, so they get back in their spaceships and leave the planet alone. And I thought that was great. They had an outside character save the day for once, and that's unusual. I liked an episode called XL5 to H2O, where they have to go onto a water planet. I should explain, the spaceship could divide into the main body of the spaceship, which is usually controlled by Robert when they left, and the nose cone, which was referred to as Fireball Jr., could detach and land on planets on three little landing skids, and it had retro rockets. It also carried the interceptor missiles in its nose cone. That was important in an episode called The Prisoner on the Lost Planet, where Colonel Zodiac encounters an alien woman who has been exiled to this like volcanic planet. She was the queen of the Amazons, and they exiled her there for some reason that she doesn't explain, and they don't either. But she's become sort of mad, and she's trying to destroy Fireball Jr. But she has invented a machine that can control the volcano, and she's going to melt it into slag using molten lava. Professor Maddox and Venus are trapped aboard Fireball Jr., and they finally figure out they can use the interceptors to destroy the machine, and that will stop the lava, and that works. And then there's a little bit of a sexist scene in the end where Venus had been trying to lift the Fireball Jr. off and can't, because she can't get it started. And Steve comes forward and says, "Of course you couldn't get it started. You didn't switch in the blue circuit. Isn't that just like a woman? You forgot something that simple." She says, "You better watch it, or else I'm going to become nasty like your alien girlfriend." So she wasn't going to take any guff from him in that episode, and I liked that. There are some other, kind of sexist episodes where they're making her go get coffee and do like domestic things, but she was an important part of the team, and they did emphasize that. So I don't think it was really as bad as a lot of people think. A lot of good episodes, a lot of fun episodes. The characters often, showed character growth more than a lot of series. Particularly Lieutenant 90, it was always shown as sort of a bumbling character. He's always getting yelled at by Commander Zero for screwing up. But in the end, he grows. He gets his flight wings, even though there's a kind of a disaster. He recovers, and he's rewarded his flight wings. There's also a great funny episode where he called The Adventures of a Space General, where he imagines himself being in charge, and of course things do not go well, and he has to call Steve and Professor Maddox to come and Commander Zero to come save him. That all turns out to be all a dream. There's some good funny stuff, especially with Zuni and driving Robert crazy and driving Area. There's one called Whistle for Danger, where as sort of revenge, Zuni has been driving Professor Zero or Commander Zero nuts, and he was babysitting him, I guess, for Venus. Just like being wild, and so as a sort of revenge, Commander Zero gives Zuni this whistle. Well, he's only supposed to blow the whistle if there's danger, but he's just blowing it all the time just to drive people nuts, and especially Professor Maddox. He's driving them nuts, blowing this whistle. Finally, when there is danger and he blows the whistle, they don't pay any attention to him. It's kind of a boy who cried wolf situation. I liked that. There's one called I think Beyond the Light Barrier, where they push the fireball past light speed, and it has some interesting effects. They have to try and turn around and slow down, and that's kind of dangerous. That was interesting. one called XL5 to H2O, where they land on a water planet where this strange, kind of evil-looking creature they call an aquamphibian, who's sort of a reptilian alien, is just killing people with this gas gun, and they don't know why, and they have to figure it out, and they have to stop him. That's interesting because they use their jetmobiles underwater for the first time, which was kind of cool. The jetmobiles were a great innovation because it allowed the characters to move from place to place without having to make the marionettes walk, which was always a difficult process because, again, to make a marionette walk, the puppeteers had to stand on a catwalk above the set and manipulate them with their, sticks and strings. Well, it doesn't work very well because you can't control the feet well enough. The strings are not precise enough to perform that kind of motion. Well, they didn't have to do that with the jetmobiles. They just sit on the jetmobile, and they actually, when they show the opening scene where they're going into Fireball XL5, they're just flying the jetmobiles up into a hatch and then lowering them down into the spaceship. Also, when they go out to explore planets, they use the jetmobiles. Some things that were a little bit scientifically inaccurate about the show were that they did not use spacesuits when they went out to do repairs. They would take things called oxygen pills, which allowed them to breathe, but of course they wouldn't protect them from solar radiation or radiation from space, so that's not really accurate. They did have little jet packs that they used called thruster packs, and that was, okay, because the astronauts really did use those. And they did use spacesuits when they went to an alien planet where they didn't know the atmosphere. So that's was good. That was good attention to detail. There's a great show, a lot of great episodes. I'm not going to go through them. There are 39 of them. But I told you a few of my favorites there. Another one I liked was called Space City Special because at the end of it, the crew of Fireball performs the song Fireball, which I thought was terrific. And Steve was given a medal for his leadership, I think, and performing all these rescue missions. Not a terrific show, but it was fun, and I loved, when I was a kid, I had a what is now a rare collectible. It was a 20-inch plastic Fireball XL5 model kit, and the Fireball Jr. detached. It had figures of Steve and Venus on their jetmobiles, and it fired the interceptor missiles out the nose cone, which I thought was really terrific. I probably play with it until it broke, but wished I hadn't. I wish I'd kept it mint in the box because now they're worth a lot of money if you can find one. They do make reproductions, but the originals are somewhat rare. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that show. All of it, the episodes are available on Tubi for free, and it's well worth rewatching.